The people of Earth found their feet in the 20th century, leaving those shores behind for the first time to make bold but tiny steps upon the moon. Beyond, it soon became clear, are wonders to both delight and terrify. The 21st and 2nd centuries saw great cities sprawl across the rusty brown Martian deserts. Humanity learning to walk. Tested, faltering, and getting back up. Upon the shoulders of countless ancestors, the children of Helios stand. The stars beckon, as they have done for all time, an invitation. ISS Sagan, commanded by Jonathan Beniflower, is at last prepared to answer their call. Welcome to Stellaris. Six light years from home, in the Barnard star system, ISS Sagan and her crew came upon a world, dim in the weak light of its tiny red sun, but habitable. Temperature averages were far lower than the coldest places on Earth. Commander Beniflower noted how this place brought up memories of old photographs, from before Daidalia was established, when there were only dusty plains where now his home stood. And yet, unlike Mars in those early days, simple forms of life were found in atmospheric samples, and high-resolution imagery revealed odd creatures, scurrying, flying, and slithering through the frigid wastes. The tenacity of life, shown so clearly in those early images, would inspire generations for ages to come. An evolutionary tree entirely independent of the Earth, and in such hostile conditions. Rumours and talk abound that we may be far from alone in the cosmos. A second vessel set off from Earth not long after the first. She was christened ISS Hawking and placed in the able hands of Sir Nishant Deshmukh, a former Prime Minister of the now defunct GBFA. His appointment was sure to turn some heads, but his record as a keen astronavigator spoke for itself. Putting bitter memories in her wake and refocusing efforts to discovery, ISS Hawking set a course to the closest stars beside the Sun. Treasures awaited in the Centauri system. 3 suns shone over a green and blue world, rugged continents and vast oceans, not dissimilar to those which blessed humankind for eons. But this place was pristine, bustling with flora and fauna entirely new, but recognizably convergent to science. Soon, the glistening jewel shed its official designation, AC-2b. From all corners and cultures of the Earth came names which, in times past, had described paradise. Eden, Shangri-La, Elysium, Valhalla, Zion. It fell to her discoverer to name this new world. Sir Deshmukh chose the decidedly neutral Terra Nova, his political career coming to the fore. With the conclusion of operations in the Barnard system, ISS Sagan was ordered to return to Helios for shore leave. But, being Martian by blood, Commander Beniflower politely, yet firmly, declined. Confident in the resolve of his crew, and spurred on by discoveries in the Centauri system, ISS Sagan made rapid progress to the Ilphion system. At first glance, there was little here of note, save the now routine assortment of alien worlds. With fervor to explore growing back home, the crew pressed on through reports and surveys, until their work paid off. There was something here, a relic of the past, a past unfathomably deep. The surface of an otherwise inconspicuous planetoid was carved into geometric patterns with mathematical precision. It was doubtful this formation could be natural. On Earth, Mars, Luna, and throughout the universities of Helios, anthropologists, historians, and artists scrambled to speculate and theorize, to rewrite their fields in ways never before imagined. Construction companies also scrambled, not for theories, but practice. There was a genuine, serviceable need beyond Neptune. And soon, Barnard's star was the first alien sun to shine upon humanity, not in a world, but through the windows and service hatches of an orbital habitat, of the sort which littered the asteroid belt and outer planets. Their people adept at building and inhabiting the void. Their expertise now invaluable. Sirius, the brightest star in the northern sky, has a companion, a dazzling white dwarf, the smouldering embers of a star. It is perhaps the last place you would expect to find life, and yet, under the unbearable glare of its dual suns, a world shepherds simple life forms, extremophiles. Just standing on the surface unprotected would roast an earthling alive in a matter of minutes. This planet too, like Terra Nova before it, inspired a namesake from antiquity, Hades. Not only were there strange worlds to be found, but odd signals, ticking and hissing, calling out to the wayward traveller. This one had a certain urgency to it. However, it would appear ISS Hawking was the first vessel to travel this way in a very long time. The signal came from a life pod, from which, once opened, emanated the putrid stench of decay. Contained within was a strange alien being, long dead and mummified by time, a macabre first encounter with fellow spacefarers, and reminder of the dangers that await. A short while later, another steady tick broke the static aboard ISS Hawking. Another lifeboat, with another lost soul entombed within, this time clutching the likeness of another. Perhaps a mate or revered leader. They would never know. This region of space must have been the setting of immense turmoil in the distant past. The specimens were reptilian, with scaly bodies and a hulking frame. Attached to their spine were fragile membranes, wing-like in appearance, though it is unlikely they were used for flight. Perhaps instead for display or intimidation. A living member of the species would be a foreboding sight. Academic institutions across the system were set ablaze by revelations of ancient remains and ruins in the depths of space. Exoarchaeology, a previously unknown and speculative branch of the sciences, received massive attention. Before long, a third expedition was chartered. ISS Ptolemy, headed by Dr. Anya Gowda, was to seek out relics and artifacts left by past spacefarers. Despite Ptolemy's mission statement, it would be the ISS Sagan that made the first startling discovery. On a barren planet, some 20 light-years from Earth, was a small structure, little more than a satellite dish protected from the elements. Weird as that may be, it was broadcasting in English. Shakespearean English, to be precise. Stories unknown to experts in the field had clearly been of some interest to passing visitors, who decided to pay the bard a strange and unexpected tribute. Upon arriving at her destination, ISS Ptolemy received an unusual signal. By this time, such a thing was not only common, but expected. To the point that jumping into a system and not being bombarded by alien dialects and codes was a source of some anxiety. But this signal was an outlier. It was recent. Apparently, A beacon within the Ilphion system began transmitting only moments after the crew of the ISS Sagan made contact with the structure on Vega 2. Perhaps these were our enigmatic admirers, and the sculptors of Ilphion 5A. Was it all to get our attention? The signal gave coordinates to a system only a short jump away. ISS Ptolemy was ordered to follow, and set off immediately. A marvelous world awaited, lush with immense biodiversity, and reddish in hue from a very different, but recognizable, photochemical organism. As a landing party was prepared to disembark, Dr. Gowda received a message on her personal communication device. 3 words: follow the whales. The transmission originated from the only artificial structure on this world, a steeple rising high above the clouds. With the landing party ready for separation, the message repeated, this time on all communication channels. Follow the whales. Follow the whales. Something was definitely lost in translation, but Dr. Gowda decided it was best to heed this odd request and turned about. Later, it would be found that a new set of coordinates had been uploaded to the ship's computer. These odd beings, who seemed to know our language, had given us no reason to fear, and so, without contact to Helios, ISS Ptolemy pressed onward. Perseverance was soon rewarded, for shortly after the message had repeated for the last time, something big was picked up on long-range sensors. Not one, but many. A herd. Organic hulks in the vacuum of space, propelled by spurts of gas, and far more squid-like than whale. But you could understand the confusion. They were on an intercept course. All hands were prepared for battle, but it soon became clear this was unnecessary. Around the Ptolemy, these space whales gracefully danced. There were calves, cows, and bulls, distinguished by size and markings across the headplate, each an expert at maneuvering in microgravity. Many aboard the ship reported being overcome with emotion as the herd circled around ISS Ptolemy and took formation at her flanks. They waited, facing the same direction, as though pointing the way. The vessel, and her now blubbering cargo of humans, was powerless to resist. The Tier Yankee, as they would later be known, led ISS Ptolemy to a beacon broadcasting yet another set of coordinates for the bright star, just one short jump ahead. With hyperdrive primed, Dr. Gowda and her crew jumped into legend. "Welcome, Ptolemy, to Vanek," said the message received immediately on arrival. "We are Vol." An olive-complexion humanesque face appeared on the forward communication monitor. It looked as though this individual was attempting a smile, but had only heard about the concept in theory. Dr. Gowda stumbled to remember her first contact protocol. This was supposed to be momentous, a grand display of civilization and a triumphant note for the history books. It would almost certainly be recorded that way, but in reality she was interrupted sharply by the face upon the screen. "Yes, yes, we know who you are," he said impatiently. "Now that you are here, we shall be in contact with your government shortly. Feel free to explore our system, but please don't be a nuisance." With that, the monitor went black, and the crew sat in silence for some time. Strangely designed vessels crowded the system. They were almost bird-like in appearance. A blazing blue sun shone over the Vol home world, a world that was ancient beyond measure. Even Vol historians could not account for all the ruins. The world had once been a planet-wide city, a Eucomenopolis. Some great catastrophe in the forgotten past rendered the city unsustainable. It was from these ruins that Vol civilization arose. ISS Ptolemy left from Vol space enriched with data which dwarfed every other archaeological, historical, and scientific endeavor, both past and present. Stories of planet-spanning computers which stored exabytes of data, the archives of history long before the vol, telling of wars and incursions, tragedy and triumph, worlds ravaged by nuclear war, and how these benevolent benefactors were steadily restoring the biosphere, and others on the brink of either Armageddon or Ascension. A stark reminder of what could have become of humanity. They told us of distant nebula and tempestuous stars, and they told us they were glad to have finally met us. Humanity was not alone in the cosmos. The Fermi paradox conclusively answered. They were there, watching, allowing humanity to make its own way. Formal diplomatic contact with an alien culture from another world was made on the 2nd of February 2210. It was a Thursday. Why had they only watched? Some would inevitably ask. Not aided in Earth's many trials. It is because, they replied with solemn concern, there are dangers in the void. Reaching for space is not an end to hubris and vulnerability. You must have life experience to overcome. Besides, they said, you cannot run without first learning to walk.